Hello, everyone. Let me get this going. There we go. Hope you're all doing okay. We are almost done with the semester. We have almost made it. Here we go. I've tried to record this many a times. I keep getting interrupted, so let's hope that this is the time. Perfect. Let's get going because I got a lot to get through. So mine is Unit 3, Case B, the Gaffigan family. Just so you know, it's closely related to Jim Gaffigan. This is a younger picture of the Gaffigan family. They are a little bit older. For example, the two boys right here, they're in high school, which they'll come into play. But I wanted a picture, and they gave me these pictures, so here you go. So basic background of the Gaffigan family. George, the father, has bipolar 2 disorder. Most of the time, he's a wonderful father, husband, and employee. When he's slightly manic, he deep cleans the entire house, garage, and cars. He writes songs for the family. He's kind of the hero of the family in a sense. He's got lots of energy. He can get a lot done. An example that the case study said is when Julia, the wife, the mom, when she went out for a weekend for work, George one day ripped all the wood out in the house. The next day he put all new wood back in, and then he put all the furniture back in all by himself. So he's got a lot of energy. He is an Olympic athlete, so he's very physically fit. He is very smart, graduated with I believe it was an engineering degree. Very smart, lots of energy, and a lot going on. About 4 times a year, though, he hits his lows. About a month long where he is moody and dark and doesn't get out very much. And he has been on medications. He doesn't like the medications. When he's on them, he calls it his sloth mode because he feels like it is holding him back, getting rid of his energy. During his manic phases, he calls it his Tigger mode. And during his down phases, he calls it his Eeyore mode. Julia, the wife, she is surprisingly, she can take the ups and downs pretty well, but they're getting a little worried because they see that it's starting to affect the children a little bit, specifically the two older boys, and they're beginning to mirror the father's behavior. In fact, it's gotten so bad that the two older boys have been kicked out of high school because of truancy, and they're now staying in bed all day like their father does during his darker times. Julia feels like she's been sympathetic to them, feels like maybe she's enabling them, giving them a secondary gain. So she's bringing the whole family into therapy to see what they can do. One more important thing that I got with talking to Dr. Panos is that George is kind of emotionally abusive to the family, especially the kids, because again, he's incredibly smart, has all this energy, an Olympic athlete, and he can't see why the kids are not up there with him. And so he has been kind of emotionally abusive almost, bringing the kids down a little bit. We got to get going because time flies when you're having fun. I'm thinking of what I want to do. I was reading up on structural therapy because I liked that, but then when I was reading the Gayheart book, I found a little bit about functional family therapy, which is quite intriguing. I thought it would work pretty well in here. The basics behind it, it's empirically validated family therapy, works specifically with conduct disorder, delinquency, youth in the juvenile court system, which this family is currently in the juvenile court system. The legal system kind of came to them and saying, what's going on here? You got two boys who are dropped out of high school. They were kicked out for truancy. They're kind of worried, the legal system, of what's going on. And so that's kind of why I focused on this therapy, created by James Alexander and Thomas Sexton. Basic overview of it, it integrates cognitive theory, systems theory, learning theory, uses a lot of interventions from structural, strategic, and CBT. It's multi-systemic and family-focused. So it believes that when you're treating multiple systems, it's best to treat them in the family. That strong bonds are critical in keeping youth out of trouble, and things like that. And then you look past the family too. You're gonna, and specifically in this case, I would want to bring in like, oh, there's legal system going on. What's going on there? Are there caseworkers going on? The school. How can we get the school involved so we can get these boys back into school and back into a normal kind of way of life? And so the C is a little bit broader than just the family. Basic assumptions of it, how problems arise, how change occurs. So basically, think about what Todd always tells us. He always says that families are functional. Relationships, they're functional. They often function in maladaptive ways, but they function and they serve a purpose. They're not dysfunctional. And functional family therapy goes right along with that. These families are functional, but problems arise when the way that they express those functions, they do it in maladaptive ways. And the behaviors in family, they're trying to function to keep two things going. They call them relational functions. We got relational connection, So they function to keep that connection. Think structural, think boundaries. So we have high independence. Is the family interdependent? Are boundaries closed? Are they open? Or is there like a mix between the two? So the functions try to keep the boundaries in the family. And the functions also try to keep the hierarchy. And so here specifically think of who's got the power, who's got the control in the family. Do the parents have it? Do the kids have it? Do they share kind of power and control? Do they go back and forth? So the behaviors in families, the functions keep these intact, keep those boundaries, they keep that hierarchy. And the problem is, again, they occur when the behaviors kind of are keeping those functions in a maladaptive way. And how change occurs then within families is you change the expression of what's going on, not necessarily the function. Meaning that functional family therapy doesn't believe that there is an optimal way that a family should be structured. There's no optimal way. Every family comes from different cultures and backgrounds, and you're not trying to change the function and the structure. You're trying to change the expression of what's going on. An example of this in this case study is with like George talking down on the kids. You want to help him kind of express more empathy and change how he relates with the kids, still keeping his the power and the connection and the hierarchy all that the same. You're just trying to change how he is connecting in a sense with the kids. It's an example of that. Basic principles, core tenets. It's respect based. Like the families come from different backgrounds. You go with what they have. It's multi-systemic, data-driven. It's been studied for 40 years, and it's phase-based, which we'll get into the next slide. They deal a lot with risk and protective factors across many different domains. So you're trying to minimize the risk factors throughout the whole therapy and try to find ways to get up those protective factors within the family to help teenagers and the whole family, but specifically teenagers behave in a better way. It's grouped into 3 different phases. Early phase is engagement. You're trying to motivate the family. You're lowering those risk factors within the family, trying to really lower the blame and negativity, increasing the alliance with the family, trying to create a family problem sequence that they all can attack together. And once they have lower blame and negativity, then you move into the behavior change, which you are building connections with the family. You're trying to, again, build on those protective factors. A lot of skill training goes in here. This is where you're trying to get into those behaviors and trying to change a little bit more of those behaviors. And then lastly, you're generalizing it. So you're taking from this one specific area, like now what are you going to do in like in the school? What are you going to do now when, for example, George goes down into a low bipolar moment? Like how are we going to help the family in those moments be able to get through them in a more effective way? Quick interventions, because time is flying. Wow. Identifying problem sequences, which we've talked about a lot. What comes before, what comes after. Doing like a family, like getting a family influence, like having them agree on a problem sequence is important. A lot of relational reframing you're doing. So you're going from blaming one individual to seeing that the problems are relational. An example of this is maybe when George is getting mad at the kids for not being able to do as much as he thinks they are, and staying in bed all day. We can reframe that and saying more of like, maybe they're staying in bed all day because they see that they can't reach what you want to do. And so it's easier for them to stay in bed all day other than trying to reach up to your high standards that they don't feel like they can get. So you're just trying to reframe problems. And so the family can see it, again, trying to lower that blame and negativity, especially in the first phase of therapy. Building organizational themes. Basics behind this, you're just trying to help the family see different. I see it kind of as reframing. Like anger implies hurt, nagging equals importance, differences can be frightening. So you're not really seeing like, oh, dad's really mad at me. Oh, dad's mad at me because he's worried a little bit about me and worried about my future, not just because dad's mad at me. A few more interventions that they talked about in the book. Processing comments, so like enactments. This is when you're in the behaviors change. You're trying to change the kind of function, not the function, again, we're not changing function, but you're trying to change the behavior in the family so they can function more effectively. And so process comments, so you interrupt the family, like if the dad is kind of talking down on the kids again, you'll kind of interrupt and say, yeah, this is what's happening right here. Do you see this? Let's try this again, kind of thing. Communication skills building, mutual problem solving, trying to get the kids more involved, all the family really all together in problem solving together. So it's not just one person doing it. Research. So the research is good on functional family therapy. It's been studied for about 40 years. The book, Gehart's book, talked about it's the first in many landmark trials in the research world. It's the first to show favorable outcomes in the juvenile court system, first to be conducted by independent investigators, one of the largest trials using it in the real world settings. It's been shown to be effective, especially in helping teenagers stay out of the juvenile court system. Once they're in, it helps them stay out. And the research shows that a lot of research shows that families are the best ways to help with behavior, not necessarily group homes and things like that. So first things first, when I'm working with the Gaffigan family, I want to assess for safety. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of emotional kind of abuse, a lot of expressed emotion. The mom, Julia, is kind of checked out. She's not really totally in the family. Her kids are staying in bed all day, and they're kind of like, oh, what's going on? So I want to make sure that there's no violence going on in the family. So I would assess for violence, and then if there is something that comes up, some type of abuse, I would want to report that, obviously, to the proper authorities, DCFS. I also want to check for suicide ideations. When George is down, what's going through his mind? Is he safe? When those kids are staying in bed all day and they're darkened down, like, are they going to be safe? Are they thinking of maybe taking their lives? It's most important to get through at the first of the start of therapy to make sure everyone is safe within the family. I also want to address the legal issues with the family. What are they doing currently? Because the court system, kids are in the court system. What are they doing to help there? Do they have caseworkers? Who is there? Again, I want to think multi-systemic. So I want to start addressing that from the beginning. And then I want to jump in and start seeing how assess for family functions and looking for protective and risk factors in the family. As far as assessment goes, they're more interested in relational systems and how they are adaptive or maladaptive. You want to look for protective factors, risk factors, because you're going to be helping increase those protective factors and decrease those risk factors throughout therapy. And again, they're more interested in the relationship functions than necessarily the diagnostic assessment. They want to see those relationships because if we can fix how they're expressing themselves, then we can hopefully fix the behavior, is the idea. So goals then, so after we assess, I have goals in each of the different phases of therapy. First is engagement. I want to decrease that blame and increase the family alliance. So doing those problem sequences, reframing those problems. I want to do some empathy training with George, trying to get him to see what's going on in the kid's eyes so we can lower his kind of emotional almost abuse and get him involved in the family and that will in turn get the family more excited and interested in the behavior change, which is phase 2. Also, I want to do some psychoeducation because again, George is up here. He's super smart, super athletic, and he doesn't see that's normal to him. But his teenagers are normal, but he thinks they should be higher than they really are. So, kind of doing some psychoeducation on development of teenagers and what goes on behind there. Running out of time. Let's do this quick. Behavior change, phase 2. Want to start looking at those behaviors and there's relational functions. Parent training, conflict management, and processing comments. Here, again, we want to work on how we can communicate better other than constantly bringing people down with George. And here I want to get the mom more involved too. Especially, for example, if George is on his lower phases, when he's got that month when he's really low, what is the mom doing? I want to be able to pull her into the parent hierarchy and get her more involved in the family so that things can maybe run more smoothly when George is down in those low moments and the teenagers want to also mimic those behaviors. Mom can be there to help that a little bit more with some parent training and things like that. I want to focus on the school, getting Jason and Josh back into school, working with the school itself and working with maybe any case managers, seeing what we're doing to get them back in there and increasing those protective factors outside of the family. Again, getting the school involved, getting peers involved with Josh and Jason and things like that. Lastly, generalization, helping the family respond to new problems that may arise. Again, what are we going to do when dad's down? What are we going to do at school? Broadening it a little bit more and just keep practicing generalizing and then hopefully being able to be done with therapy, terminating. Provisional diagnoses, George, bipolar 2 disorder. He was already diagnosed with that. Jason and Josh, I want to do more testing. I wanted to do more assessment. Again, like functional family therapy doesn't necessarily rely on these diagnostics, but I wanted to be able to diagnose that more. Right now, provisionally, of major depressive disorder, just because they're down, depressed, into their rooms all day. But I want to do more assessment on there to see a little bit more of what's going on before I do a full diagnosis. Z codes, parent-child relational problems, academic educational problems, things like that. Well, I'm working with diversity. Functional family therapy is great at diversity. It hasn't really studied a lot of different cultures, but the biggest thing is that therapist respects culture. Like, and again, it says acknowledging the relational function of problems exchange and helping the family to meet more effective ways. So we're not trying to change the structure. Like, all cultures are different. This works for individual cultures. This works for collectivistic cultures. We're not trying to change the function. We're not trying to tell a family how to function. We're trying to change the expression of that function. So it really works well with different cultures and different value systems and all that, which I love. Self as a therapist, kind of things that I was thinking about myself and my own kind of culture. I might have a bias of how I believe families should structure and function. This is something that I'm working with as we're going through the multicultural diversity class. It's like not all families function the same way that I believe they should or how my family should, which again is great about functional family therapy because you're just trying to help them with their own functions and their own expressions. So I'd have to work a little bit about that. I'd have to work against my bias, maybe against the father, and the emotional abuse. I'd have to be able to step back and see that differently. I don't really have too much information or knowledge about juvenile court system and how that works. I'd want to do a little bit more training and studying in that, so I would know a little bit more about what's going on. Limitations, and specifically in functional family therapy, I'm going to address George's bipolar 2 disorder a little bit in there. Like, what are we going to do when dad gets down? How are we going to work with that? What kind of training are we going to do? But isn't the main focus. So that makes me a little bit worried about functional family therapy, is how is George dealing with his bipolar 2 disorder? How's the family dealing? We'll express that a little bit, but it's not the full focus of the therapy. Also, functional family therapy teaches parents how to reach out, communicate better with their children. But I'm a little bit worried about the emotional aspect of it. This is kind of CBT in general. It's more skill training, and I wonder more about the emotions. Like, how are we going to get this family connected more emotionally so that they can function in a more adaptive way, which could be a problem. Legal and ethical concerns. Obviously, the two boys are involved in juvenile court. We want to see what's going on there and seeing what the family is doing to help them get out of that. Looking for possible signs of abuse past just emotional kind of things, emotional talk down. Like, are there physical violence? Do I need to report this? Should I, like, if there is, I do need to report this, and let's get that in. Need to consider throughout therapy, especially at the beginning. I want to assess for that, as we talked about. It's kind of code of ethics, client autonomy, decision making, disclosing limits of confidentiality, maintenance of competency. Like, maintenance of competency, I want to be able to study more functional family therapy so I can be more competent. I want to know more about the juvenile court system. Limits of confidentiality, like if I want to work, like, again, abuse, if I need to report, they need to know that. If I want to work with court system, the school systems, and want to get them involved, I'll need the parental sign off and all of that to get release of information so I can talk and get them involved a little bit more and things like that. And yeah, sorry, I talked fast. I tried to get through that. There was a lot of information, and that took a good 18, 19 minutes. So feel free to speed that up if you'd like. Really sorry, there was a lot to get through. Would love your opinions, and you hope that you could get any advice. And yeah, thank you so much. We're almost done. We got this.